The Nile flows serene under the morning sun. Its greenish waters reflect the cloudless sky while fishermen cast nets on the eastern bank. In a few moments, this sacred river, the vital artery of a 3,000-year-old civilization, will transform into blood. We are in the Nile Delta in the region of Goshen, approximately 1,200 years before the Common Era. What begins here will not be a natural catastrophe. It will be the beginning of a confrontation between the living God of Egypt and the invisible God of an enslaved people, a confrontation that will redefine human history. The air is hot. Humidity rises from the river in visible waves. Along the banks, hundreds of workers bend over flax fields, their bronze bodies glistening with sweat. Men, women, children. Hebrew slaves who for generations have built the glory of the most powerful empire on earth. None of them know that this ordinary day will be remembered for millennia. None of them imagine that the gods of Egypt are about to fall one by one before their eyes. This is the archaeological and historical reconstruction of the last moments of untouched Egypt. Before 10 consecutive plagues destroyed not only the Egyptian economy and society, but the very religious structure that sustained the pharaoh's throne. To understand what is about to happen, one must first see Egypt as it was at that moment. Not the Egypt of ruins we know today, but the living, pulsing empire at the height of its power. Before we begin, write in the comments from where you are watching. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. We continue. The gaze rises over the Nile Delta. Seen from above, the territory forms a dark green triangle set within an infinite ochre desert. There are approximately 22,000 square kilometers of fertile land, nourished by the annual floods of the river. Archaeology confirms that this delta was, in the second millennium before the Common Era, one of the most densely populated regions of the ancient world. Administrative papyri found in Deir el-Medina record millions of inhabitants distributed across dozens of cities, towns, and agricultural settlements. The Nile dominates everything. It is not just a river, it is Hapi, the god of the flood, the source of all life. Its 42 branches and canals cross the delta like veins in a living body. The waters rise every year between June and September, depositing the black silt that the Egyptians call Kemet, the black land, the fertile land, which gives the country itself its name. Without the Nile, there is no Egypt. Without its floods, there is no harvest. Without its waters, there is no life. That is why turning the Nile into blood will not be just a demonstration of power. It will be a direct blow to the theological heart of Egypt. The camera now descends over Pi-Ramesses, the capital built by Ramesses II in the delta itself. Modern archaeologists have identified its ruins beneath present-day Qantir, and excavations reveal a city of monumental scale. It is estimated that 300,000 inhabitants lived here at the height of its glory. Avenues 20 meters wide crossed the city, flanked by colossal statues of the pharaoh. Temples dedicated to Amun, Ptah, Seth, and Astarte rose in each main block. The blue of the glazed tiles, the obelisks covered in gold, the gardens irrigated by canals. All of this has been confirmed by ceramic fragments, stone foundations, and inscriptions found on site. The royal palace occupies the center of the city. Its mud brick walls are coated in stucco, painted with scenes of military victories, religious processions, the pharaoh in his war chariot crushing enemies under the wheels. The floor is of polished alabaster. Papyriform columns support ceilings painted blue with golden stars. The air inside the palace is cool, scented with frankincense imported from Punt. It is here that Ramesses II, if we accept the traditional chronology, or possibly his successor Merenptah, rules over an empire that extends from Sudan to Syria. The pharaoh is considered an incarnate god, son of Ra, the sun. His word is cosmic law. His will sustains Mut, the universal order that separates Egypt from chaos. Questioning the pharaoh is not just a crime, it is blasphemy against the structure of reality itself. It is against this man-god that Moses presented himself days before, demanding the liberation of a people of slaves. The text of Exodus records that Moses and Aaron entered the presence of the Pharaoh with a simple message. "Thus says the Lord, God of Israel, let my people go." The Pharaoh responded with contempt. "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go." This response was not merely political, it was theological. The Pharaoh recognized no god above himself. In the Egyptian religious system, he was the intermediary between the gods and men, and in many aspects he was himself divine. To admit the existence of a superior god would be to admit that his power had limits, that the cosmic order he represented could be challenged. It is exactly this that the plagues will demonstrate. But before any plague falls, Egypt still functions in its millennial routine. Let us see what that routine was like. The day begins before dawn. The priests in the temples of Heliopolis, Memphis, and Thebes are already awake, performing the purification rituals that must be completed before the sun rises. They bathe in sacred lakes, dress in immaculate white linen, shave all body hair. They enter the inner sanctuaries where the statues of the gods are washed, dressed, and fed with offerings of bread, beer, meat, and fruit. These rituals happen 3 times a day, at dawn, at noon, at dusk, and it is believed they keep the gods satisfied and present in Egypt. What would happen if the gods were humiliated? What would happen if each divinity were publicly defeated by the god of a slave people? That question is not yet in anyone's mind. In the fields around Pyrameses, the Hebrew slaves are already working. The book of Exodus mentions that they manufactured bricks of mud and straw for the royal constructions. Archaeology confirms this data. Excavations in Pyrameses and Pithom, the 2 store cities mentioned in the Bible, revealed layers of bricks made with and without straw, exactly as the biblical text describes when it narrates the hardening of working conditions. The Hebrews have been in Egypt for generations. The text of Exodus speaks of 430 years since the arrival of Jacob and his sons during the Great Famine. What began as a family of 70 people became a numerous people, so numerous that the Pharaoh began to see them as a threat. "Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we," records Exodus. The solution was systematic slavery, forced labor, and finally the order to kill every newborn Hebrew boy. It is from this genocide that Moses survived. Placed in a papyrus basket in the Nile, he was found by the Pharaoh's daughter and raised in the royal court. He knows Egypt from the inside. He knows its gods, its rituals, its language, its mentality. And now he has returned, after 40 years in the desert of Midian, with a mission that seems impossible. The land of Goshen, where the Hebrews are concentrated, lies in the eastern portion of the delta. The name appears both in the biblical text and in Egyptian papyri, though with different spellings. It was a region of pastures less developed than the Nile Valley proper, considered suitable for semi-nomadic cattle-rearing peoples. Here, on this specific morning, Hebrew men mold bricks in wooden forms, women carry water in ceramic jars, children run between the mud huts, old men sit in the scarce shade of date palms. For centuries, these people have preserved their ancestral traditions, the memory of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the promises of a promised land, the hope of liberation. But hope has run dry. The routine of slavery has become normality. To be born, to work, to die under the Egyptian whip, it is all the last. Generations have known, and then Moses appeared with a message and a staff. The text of Exodus records that before the plagues, Moses and Aaron performed signs before the Pharaoh. Aaron's staff was cast to the ground and transformed into a serpent. The Egyptian magicians, called by the Hebrew text chatumim, probably priests specialized in magical rituals, did the same with their staffs. But Aaron's serpent devoured the magician's serpents. This detail was not trivial. The serpent, especially the uraeus, the cobra, was a symbol of Egyptian royal power. The pharaoh wore a golden serpent on his crown. That the serpent of a Hebrew slave should devour the serpents of the Egyptian sages was a portent of what was to come, but the pharaoh hardened his heart. He would not yield. Now, finally, the plagues are about to begin. The Nile continues flowing. Fishermen pull nets full of tilapia and perch. Women fill jars on the bank. Children swim in the shallow waters. Laundresses beat clothes on the stones. Scribes in official boats count cargoes going up and down the river. Trade flows as it always has. Boats transport papyrus from Sais, linen from Achmim, beer from Pelusium, wheat from the royal granaries. The sun is high now. The temperature exceeds 35 degrees. The air vibrates over the desert sand surrounding the delta. Sacred ibises walk on the banks, seeking fish and frogs in the reeds. Crocodiles sleep on sandbanks. Hippopotamuses emerge briefly to breathe and sink again. Nature follows its eternal cycle as if nothing were about to change. It is this ordered, predictable world, governed by ancestral gods and millennial rituals, that is about to collapse. The text of Exodus relates that the Lord said to Moses, "Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. Behold, he is going out to the water. Stand on the bank of the Nile to meet him." And so Moses went. Archaeology cannot confirm the supernatural details of the plagues, but it can confirm the setting. It can confirm the existence of Pyrameses and Pithom. It can confirm the presence of Semitic populations in the eastern delta. It can confirm the names of the Egyptian gods and the rituals practiced in their temples. It can confirm the absolute power of the pharaoh and the religious structure that sustained his throne. And history, both biblical history and echoes in other sources, records that something extraordinary happened in Egypt during this period. The Ipuwer Papyrus, an ancient Egyptian document now in the Museum of Leiden, describes catastrophes that some scholars consider parallel to the biblical plagues. The river turned to blood, crops destroyed, widespread death, slaves fleeing with their masters' goods. The dating and interpretation of this papyrus are debated, but its existence indicates that memories of extraordinary calamities were preserved in Egyptian tradition. Let us return to the moment. The bank of the Nile, the morning sun. Moses is standing holding the staff. Aaron is by his side. From the other side, approaching for his morning purification rituals, comes the pharaoh with his retinue. Guards with spears, priests, scribes, servants carrying parasols and ostrich feather fans. The two groups meet at the river's edge. What happens next will not be a theological debate. It will not be a political negotiation. It will be a demonstration of power. Power over nature, power over the gods, power over the very definition of reality. Because each plague that will come will not be random. Each one will strike a specific god of the Egyptian pantheon. The water turned to blood strikes Hapi, the god of the Nile, and Khnum, the god who protected the river's sources. The frogs that will invade Egypt humiliate Heket, the frog-headed goddess associated with fertility. The lice or gnats will strike Geb, the god of the earth from which they emerge. The flies or swarming insects will challenge Khepri, the scarab god. The death of the livestock will attack Hathor, the cow goddess, and Apis, the sacred bull of Memphis. The boils will humiliate Sekhmet, the goddess of healing, and Isis, the great magician. The hail will challenge Nut, the goddess of the sky, and Seth, the god of storms. The locusts will attack Osiris, god of agriculture and vegetation. The 3 days of darkness will defeat Ra, the sun itself, the supreme divinity of Egypt, of whom the pharaoh claimed to be the son. And the death of the firstborn will strike the pharaoh himself, whose eldest son was considered divine. Plague after plague, god after god, the Egyptian pantheon will be systematically humiliated. And with each humiliation the question will echo, who is the Lord? The pharaoh said he did not know him. After the plagues, not only the pharaoh but all of Egypt and all the ancient world will know. The text of Exodus explicitly declares this intention. Against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments, says the Lord. The plagues are not arbitrary punishments. They are a systematic demonstration that the gods of Egypt are powerless before the God of Israel. But all this is still to come. At this exact moment, before the first plague, the Nile is still green. Egypt is still powerful. The pharaoh still considers himself invincible. The Egyptian gods still receive their morning offerings in hundreds of temples. The cosmic order still seems intact. Millions of Egyptians woke up this morning not knowing that their world is about to crumble. Thousands of Hebrews woke up this morning not knowing that their slavery is coming to an end. An 80-year-old man is standing on the riverbank holding a wooden staff. The sun warms the water, the fish swim, the children play on the bank, and then Moses raises the staff. Aaron stretches out his hand over the waters of Egypt, over its rivers, its canals, its ponds, all its reservoirs of water. The text of Exodus records, "And all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood, and the fish that were in the river died, and the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river, and there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt." It is not a gradual change. It is not a metaphor. From one instant to another, all water in Egypt, in the jars of the houses, in the tanks of the temples, in the irrigation canals, in the great sacred Nile itself, becomes red, thick, fetid. Fish rise dead to the surface. The smell of decomposition spreads. People who are swimming run out, their bodies stained red. Women drop their jars. Children cry. The priests in the temples look in horror at the ritual pools that should purify and are now contaminated. 7 days this first plague will last. 7 days in which no Egyptian can drink water except by digging wells beside the river. 7 days in which the god Hapi will be dead in his own waters, and this is only the beginning. 9 plagues are yet to come, each one worse than the last. Each one destroying one more layer of Egyptian security, until on the last night, the angel of death passes over the land and takes every firstborn, from the son of the Pharaoh in his palace to the son of the captive in the dungeon. The ancient world had never seen anything like it. The ancient world would never forget. 3,200 years later, the Jews still celebrate Passover in memory of this night. Christians identify Christ as the Paschal Lamb, whose blood protects from death. The Exodus became a paradigm of liberation for oppressed peoples throughout history, from African-American slaves singing spirituals to the liberation movements of the 20th century. The locations still exist. The Nile Delta can still be visited. The ruins of Pi-Ramesses were excavated by German and Austrian archaeologists in recent decades. The mud bricks, with and without straw, are in museums. The statues of Ramesses II are in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The great temple he built at Abu Simbel still looks over the waters of Lake Nasser. Egypt survived the plagues, but it was never the same again. The era of Ramesses II is considered the last great period of pharaonic splendor. Within 2 centuries, the empire will enter terminal decline, conquered by Libyans, Nubians, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, Romans. The throne of the pharaoh god will be occupied by foreigners. The temples will be abandoned. The gods will be forgotten. And the people who left Egypt that night, crossing the sea, wandering in the desert, receiving the law at Sinai, those people survived. They survived Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Inquisitions, pogroms, even the Holocaust. They survived to this day. History showed who the Lord was, but at that exact moment, before the first plague, none of this was predictable. An old Hebrew on the riverbank, a pharaoh approaching for his rituals, an invisible God about to reveal himself, and an entire world about to be transformed. This was Egypt, minutes before the plagues of Moses, an empire at the height of its power, unaware that its power had an end. A civilization that worshipped hundreds of gods, unaware that none of them could save it. A slave people who had lost hope, unaware that their liberation was already in motion. The Nile flowed quietly. The sun shone. The Egyptian gods received their morning offerings. And then everything changed. If this documentary illuminated your understanding of sacred history, subscribe to the channel. Activate notifications. Each episode is a journey to the past to understand the present. Leave in the comments, what other biblical moments would you like to see reconstructed? Share with those who seek to know the history behind the faith. Until the next reconstruction.